Ji-eun Kim had everything a person could want, except freedom. As the only daughter of one of South Korea's most powerful pharmaceutical families, she grew up surrounded by luxury, private schools, designer clothes, and homes that felt more like museums than places to live. Her father was a man obsessed with control and legacy, and his only child was expected to follow suit. But Ji-eun didn't want to follow anyone. She wanted to run in the opposite direction. Her parents had already chosen a future for her, an arranged marriage to the son of a business partner, someone she barely knew and cared even less about. To push back, she decided to play a childish game. She would pretend to be dating someone, completely unsuitable, just to make them angry. That's when she met Min-ho. She didn't plan it. He was just another delivery driver who showed up at her door every few days with food from her favorite restaurant. He wore the same uniform, as all the others, carried the same insulated bag, and knocked on her door at exactly the same time each evening. But something about him stood out. He was polite without being fake, kind without being desperate for approval. And when he spoke, it wasn't empty words. There was meaning behind them. One night, just to test him, she ordered food at 2 a.m., knowing full well her father would see the receipt the next day. She didn't expect Min-ho to actually show up. Most people wouldn't have, but he did. He arrived soaked from the rain, tired, but still smiling. His hair was messy, his shoes wet, and yet he greeted her like it was just another night. "Evening," he said, holding out the bag. "You must really love this place." She crossed her arms. "Or maybe I just like watching you suffer." He raised an eyebrow. "In that case, you're winning." She opened the bag, took one look at the food, and frowned. "It's cold." Min-ho sighed. "I'm sorry I couldn't deliver happiness too." She smirked. Fast delivery was part of the promise. "I deliver food," he said calmly, "not miracles." She handed him a crumpled bill without looking at the amount. He glanced at it, then placed it back on the counter. "If you're trying to be cruel," he said, "do it right." Then he turned and walked away. Ji-eun watched him go, surprised not just by his words, but by how easily he walked away. No begging for a better tip, no flattery, just quiet dignity. And, for some reason, that made her curious. The next day, she ordered again. Same time, same restaurant, same driver, same reaction. He delivered the food, looked her in the eye, and left without saying much. But this time, before walking off, he handed her a small piece of paper. On it was a drawing, rough but thoughtful, a cartoon of her face, exaggerated eyebrows and all, with the caption, "Smiles are free. Try one." She rolled her eyes, but smiled anyway. From that moment on, Ji-eun started ordering from him every day, not because she was hungry, but because she wanted to see what else he'd say. And Min-ho, unaware of the role he was playing, kept showing up, always on time, always polite, always ready to leave without expecting anything in return. But the more they interacted, the more Ji-eun began to notice things. Like how he never complained about late orders, how he remembered what she liked, even if she hadn't ordered from him in weeks, how he talked about life not in terms of money or power, but in poetry, art, and dreams. One night, over tea in her apartment, after she'd insisted he stay, for a minute, she asked, "Don't you ever get tired of this?" He looked at her, confused. "Being poor," she clarified, "working all the time, delivering food to people who don't even remember your name." Min-ho thought for a second. Then he said, "I don't work just to impress people. I work to keep going. That's enough for me." She laughed. "That's sad." He shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe it's peaceful." There was something in the way he said it, calm, sure of himself, that annoyed her. She was used to people fighting to be seen, to prove their worth. But Min-ho didn't care about that. And somehow, that made her want to know him even more. When her parents demanded to meet the mystery boyfriend, she panicked. They wanted photos, details, proof that she was serious. So she did the unthinkable. She asked Min-ho to pretend to be her real boyfriend, just once. He agreed, thinking it would be a single dinner. But Ji-eun had other plans. A week later, Min-ho found himself standing outside the gates of the Kim mansion. Tall, white, and imposing, it looked like something out of a movie. He wore jeans and a hoodie, clearly underdressed, but he followed her inside without question. They were greeted by servants, offered drinks by her mother, questioned gently by her father. Minho answered everything with honesty, not arrogance, not desperation, just truth. Ji-eun watched, stunned. Her father, usually cold and distant, leaned back in his chair and said, "He's different. I like him." That night, as they walked back to the car, Ji-eun looked at Minho. "You didn't have to do that," he shrugged. "Do what? Be so real." He stopped walking. "You wanted them to believe we're together," he said. "So I did what I had to." She looked down. "Thanks." He nodded. "Anytime." As they parted ways, Ji-eun realized something strange. She didn't feel like she was playing anymore. And worse, she didn't want the game to end. Minho had agreed to play the role of Ji-eun's boyfriend for one dinner. That was the deal. But by the end of the night, he realized something strange. Everyone already believed it. Her grandmother praised his manners. Her mother asked when they were going to meet again. And her father, a man who usually dismissed anyone not connected to business, looked at him with real respect. "You're exactly the kind of man I'd approve for you," he said quietly to Minho during a break in conversation. Ji-eun overheard. She didn't know how to feel about it. It wasn't supposed to be real. He wasn't supposed to fit so easily into her world, or make her want to stay in it longer than she expected. The next few days blurred together in a haze of confusion. She kept seeing him everywhere, at the door with food, on the sidewalk walking past her building. Even in dreams she tried to ignore. And worse, she started looking forward to it. One evening, after another delivery, she invited him inside, without thinking. "I just wanted to say thanks," she lied. He raised an eyebrow but stepped in anyway. They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Then she asked, "Do you ever get tired of being good?" He looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she hesitated. "You always act like everything's fine, like nothing ever bothers you." He smiled slightly. "Sometimes things bother me. Doesn't mean I have to show it." She frowned. "Why not?" "Because showing weakness doesn't change anything," he said simply. "It just makes people think less of you." She studied him, trying to understand why that answer made her chest hurt. Then, almost out of nowhere, she blurted, "I told them you're studying economics, that you deliver food to understand the value of money." Minho blinked. "What?" She winced. "I panicked. My dad kept asking questions. I had to give him something." He stood up slowly. "So, I'm part of your story now?" "It was just one lie," she said quickly. "One lie?" He shook his head. "You made me someone I'm not." "It's not like that," she argued. "You're still you. But now they expect more," he said quietly. "And I can't give that." She watched as he walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back to her. "You deserve someone who can give you more than this." Then he handed her a small flower, a daisy, simple and unassuming, and walked out. She held it tightly, standing alone in her apartment long after he was gone. The next week the Kim family gathered for dinner again. This time, there was an announcement. "We've decided," her father said, smiling proudly, "to officially announce your engagement." Ji-eun nearly choked on her water. "Wait, what?" she managed to say. Her mother clapped her hands together. "Oh, sweetheart, we're so happy for you." Ji-eun stared at them, stunned. There had been no proposal, no talk of marriage, no sign from Minho that he even wanted this. And yet, here it was, the decision made for both of them. Later that night, she called him. "Minho, listen to me." He answered, but barely said anything. "I didn't agree to this," he said finally. I know," she replied, voice shaky. "I didn't either." There was a pause. "I don't belong in your world," he whispered. Then came the sound of the line disconnecting. And just like that, he was gone. The next morning the news spread fast. Headlines screamed, "Fake boyfriend engaged to millionaire heiress," "Delivery driver wins the heart of a Kim," "Love or lie." The The story behind Seoul's most shocking engagement. Ji-yeon scrolled through the articles, heart pounding. None of it was true. Or maybe some of it was. She didn't know anymore. All she knew was that Minho hadn't returned any of her calls since that night. She went to his usual delivery station, hoping to find him. Gone. His old apartment. Empty. It was like he had disappeared. Again. A few days passed. Then a week. Then 2. Ji-yeon stopped answering reporters. Stopped reading messages. Stopped pretending she was okay. She felt lost. Not because of the broken lie. Because of the truth that had slipped through. She had fallen for him. And he left before she could tell him. Then, one rainy afternoon, she got a message. Just 3 words. I'm sorry. No name, no explanation. She stared at the screen, heart beating faster. She typed back, "Where are you?" Silence. Minutes. Passed. Then an hour. Nothing. The city outside seemed louder than usual, the rain heavier, the lights brighter. But none of it mattered, because the one person who truly saw her was somewhere she couldn't reach. Minho was gone. Not just from her life, but from everything. Ji-yeon searched everywhere for him. She called his number until it stopped ringing altogether. She went to the delivery station where he used to work. They said he hadn't shown up in weeks. His apartment had been cleared out. Even online, there was nothing. No social media posts, no messages, no digital trace of the man who had become so important to her. It was like he had never existed. And yet, her family continued making wedding plans. The invitations were printed, the venue booked, her dress ordered. Everyone assumed she was preparing for the happiest day of her life, except Ji-eun, who felt more lost than ever. She didn't know what hurt more. The fact that Minho left, or the way her heart still beat for him even after he did. One afternoon, unable to take it anymore, she made a decision. She hired a private investigator. "I need to find someone," she told him, sliding a photo across the table. "And I need to know who he really is." Weeks passed before she got answers. First, the detective found an old address, a small rundown apartment in one of Seoul's poorer districts. There were photos taken outside the building, showing Minho entering and leaving, always alone, always unnoticed. Then came something stranger. He wasn't just living 2 lives, he was living 2 worlds. At night, under the name Kim Min-jae, Minho attended exclusive art exhibits, cultural events, and charity galas. He dressed differently, spoke with confidence, and walked into places most people could only dream of entering. But why? Why hide behind another name? Why pretend to be someone he wasn't? Ji-eun demanded the truth, and the detective gave it, to her. Minho wasn't poor. Not by any stretch of the word. He was, in fact, the sole heir to one of the largest tech fortunes in Korea, a name that carried weight, power, and expectation. But years ago, he'd walked away, renounced his family, changed his identity, because he wanted to live on his own terms. Ji-eun stared at the documents, stunned. Her hands trembled as she read through every detail. All this time, she thought she was playing a game with lies. But he had been hiding the biggest one of all. She tracked him down to a quiet neighborhood far from the city. A modest house, tucked between trees and silence. When she knocked, she wasn't sure if he would open the door. He did. His face changed when he saw her. Surprise, fear, regret. "You lied to me," she whispered. He didn't deny it. "I wanted to be loved for who I am, not for what I have." She stepped inside without waiting for permission. "This isn't who you are," she said, looking around. "This is just another version of you, another mask." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm tired of being seen only for my money." "And what about me?" she asked, voice shaking. "Did you think I was like them?" He looked away. "I didn't want you to fall for the wrong version of me." "There was no right version," she snapped. "You kept changing who you were, depending on who was watching." There was a long silence. Then, quietly, he said, "I didn't want to lose you." "But you did," she replied. before we even had a chance. Despite everything, the wedding was still on. Her father refused to cancel it. Her mother insisted it was too late to back out now. The press had already built a story around their love, fake or not. So Ji-yoon let it happen. She wore the dress, put on the rings, sat in the chapel, surrounded by flowers and cameras, and waited. She told herself he wouldn't come, but part of her hoped he would, just once. He never did. As the minutes ticked by and no groom arrived, murmurs spread among the guests. Her father stood up, confused. Her grandmother looked worried. Finally, the officiant asked, "Where is he?" No one knew. Later that evening, she received a message. "I can't do this. I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. Again. Days passed, then weeks. Ji-yoon tried to move forward, tried to forget. She went back to work, started new projects, smiled for the cameras. But none of it felt real. One morning, while walking past the same flower shop where she used to order food, she saw something that stopped her cold. A painting. In the window. It showed a woman standing by a window, eyes lifted to the sky. Beneath it, a single line. "Even when caged, you always look up." She recognized the style immediately. It was his. She rushed inside, asking where it came from. The owner explained it was submitted anonymously, part of a local artist showcase. She bought it without hesitation. Back home, she hung it on her wall, staring at it for hours. It was the closest thing to a message he had given her, and it broke her heart all over again. The wedding day arrived like any other morning, but felt like the end of something Ji-eun couldn't name. She stood at the altar, dressed in white, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. Everything was perfect, just as her family wanted. The venue was filled with flowers, music, and expectation. Everyone waited for the groom, and waited. Min-ho never came. At first, they thought it was nerves, then a delay. But as hours passed and silence stretched on, reality settled over the event like fog. The Kim family canceled everything. Guests left quietly, flowers were thrown away, the press exploded with headlines. "Where's Min-ho? Did he run away? Was it all a lie?" Ji-yoon didn't answer any of it. She went straight to his apartment, hoping, praying she'd find him there. She knocked until her knuckles hurt. No one answered. Inside, everything was gone. His clothes, his sketches, even the small notebook he used to carry everywhere was missing. Only one thing remained, a letter on the kitchen counter. She opened it slowly. It read, "I love you, but I can't be someone I'm not." She read it again, and again. Then she sat down on the cold floor and cried. Because for the first time in her life, she realized what it meant to lose someone who had never really been hers to begin with. Days passed, then weeks. Ji-eun stopped answering reporters' calls, stopped reading messages from friends asking what had happened. She avoided her parents, who kept trying to fix things by finding her another match, but nothing could fill the space Min-ho left behind. One morning, she packed a suitcase, walked out of the mansion, and never looked back. She gave up her trust fund, donated part of her fortune to social causes, closed every bank account tied to her name. She rented a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood and opened a tiny bookstore, Page and Peace. It wasn't much, just a few shelves, soft lighting, and the scent of old paper in the air. But it was hers, and for the first time she felt like she was living on her own terms. Months later, while organizing a new shipment of books, she heard the bell above the door ring. She looked up, and there he was. Min-ho stood in the doorway, wearing a simple jacket, looking thinner, tired, but still the same. He scanned the room, then his eyes met hers. They both froze. "I didn't expect this," he said quietly, stepping inside. She smiled faintly. "I know." He walked around the store, touching the spines of books, pausing at a drawing pinned to the wall, one he had made years ago. A sketch of her, standing by a window, looking up at the sky. "You kept it?" She nodded. "You taught me something important, that real life isn't about where you come from, but what you choose to do with it." He studied her carefully. "You changed." "So did you," she replied. Or maybe you finally showed me who you really are. They talked for hours, that day. Not about the past, not about the lies or the broken engagement. About them. About how she had started seeing herself differently. How she no longer needed approval from anyone else to feel worthy. About how she had learned to live without pretending. And how, even after everything, she still missed him. "I don't need your money," she said softly. "I want you." Minho looked away. "I don't know if I can give you what you deserve." "You already did," she whispered. "By showing me what real love looks like." There was a pause, long and heavy. Finally he asked, "What now?" She shrugged. "We start over." He hesitated, then nodded. "There's just one condition," she added. He raised an eyebrow. "No last names," she said. "For a year. Maybe forever." He smiled slightly. "That's fair." A year passed quietly. No headlines, no parties, no cameras. Just two people learning to build something real. Ji-yoon worked in the bookstore most days, helping students find books, recommending stories to lonely strangers, and sometimes just listening to people talk. Minho took a job teaching art to children from underprivileged neighborhoods. He painted again, not for fame, not for recognition, but because it made him feel alive. They lived simply, modestly together. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the windows, Ji-yoon watched him paint at their small kitchen table. He had turned their tiny apartment into a canvas of its own, hanging drawings on the walls, adding green plants, filling the space with warmth. She stepped behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, and rested her chin on his shoulder. "You ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't met?" she asked. He wiped his hands and turned to face her. "I try not to," he said gently, "because thinking about that feels like imagining a sky without stars." She smiled, eyes glistening. "I used to think love was something you earned," she whispered. "Something you had to prove yourself worthy of." He kissed her forehead. "You deserve love just by being you." Outside, the city hummed with life. Somewhere nearby, a street musician played a soft melody on his guitar. Inside their little world, two hearts beat in unison. Not perfect, not flawless, but real. And that was more than enough.